Canada. Land of boundless forests. Land of crystalline lakes. Land of northern lights and eternal ice. A polar bear walks silently on the ice shelf. An endless expanse of conifers vanishes at the horizon. Frozen lakes gleaming under the gentle morning light. Welcome to Canada. Welcome to the second largest nation on the planet. Known as the land of maple, this is a place of extreme contrast, where temperatures fluctuate between minus 81 degrees and plus 120 degrees Fahrenheit, where wild nature reigns supreme over immense and sparsely populated territories. But let's start from the beginning. Canada extends north of the United States, second only to Russia in territorial vastness. Yet despite its colossal dimensions, its population density is among the lowest in the world, with much of the territory covered by forests, lakes, tundra, and untouched mountains. This land of giants is embraced by three oceans, with the Atlantic to the east, the Pacific to the west, and the Arctic to the north. It is not surprising, therefore, that Canada boasts the longest coastline in the world, with a shoreline that winds for over 202,000 kilometers, drawing bays, fjords, and inlets of extraordinary beauty. Right along the Atlantic coast between Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, the Bay of Fundy offers a unique natural spectacle. Here, the highest tides on Earth occur, with differences in level that can exceed 16 meters, radically transforming the landscape twice a day. Moving into the heart of the nation, however, the landscape completely transforms. The central regions are dominated by immense agricultural plains, so vast and flat that it is said one can see a neighbor's dog run away for 3 days. These boundless prairies testify to the generosity of a land that nourishes not only its inhabitants, but much of the world. Continuing, moving northward, the plains give way to boreal forests and then to the Arctic tundra. Canada indeed extends to the Arctic Circle and includes icy territories like Nunavut, where icebergs, polar bears, and the phenomenon of the midnight sun can be found, when our star refuses to set during the Arctic summer. It is in these northern regions that the night sky often lights up with one of nature's most magical spectacles, the Northern Lights. The dancing lights transform darkness into a mix of green, blue, and purple, making Canada one of the best places in the world to admire this celestial phenomenon. Another surprising face of this nation we find in Manitoba, specifically in the small town of Churchill. Here, polar bears roam freely through the streets, making this place one of the few in the world where humans and these predators share the same spaces. And it is precisely during autumn that Churchill becomes a privileged destination for those who wish to observe these magnificent animals up close. Continuing, water is a fundamental element in the Canadian landscape. This nation hosts about 60% of the world's lakes, including the famous Great Lakes, shared with the United States. From small mirrors of water hidden in forests to lake expanses that seem like inland seas, Canada is a freshwater paradise that has no equal on the planet. But Canada is not only wild nature and infinite spaces, it is also a cultural mosaic of extraordinary complexity. Officially bilingual, with English and French spoken throughout the territory, this nation stands out as one of the most multicultural countries on the planet. In Toronto, over 140 different languages are spoken, transforming this metropolis into one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the world. Nature is not just a backdrop in this land, but an integral part of the national identity. In fact, among the most recognizable icons of this nation is the maple leaf, a symbol that proudly stands on the national flag. It is no coincidence that 75% of the world's maple syrup production comes from this land, especially from the Quebec region, where this sweet tradition is passed down from generation to generation, celebrating an ancestral bond with the forests that cover much of the territory. Canada, therefore, is much more than a simple nation. It is a place that continues to tell its vastness, its resilience, and its harmony to anyone who visits it. But now let's discover the most incredible and iconic places of this nation. Banff National Park. Imagine an alpine realm where mountains rise like guardians, with their snow-capped peaks reflecting in turquoise lakes. Banff, Canada's first national park established in 1885, is exactly this, a wild sanctuary where fauna moves freely between glacial valleys and coniferous forests. You can breathe the crisp air while exploring Lake Morne, whose waters change hues following the rhythm of the seasons. Here, among rushing waterfalls and steaming hot springs, nature reveals its purest essence in a territory that extends over 6,600 square kilometers. At dawn, when the fog rises over Lake Louise, you can witness a spectacle that no photograph can truly capture, with silence becoming tangible, broken only by the call of an elk in the distance. Moreover, on the Bow Valley Parkway, bison graze undisturbed, witnesses to the history of these lands, which the native Stoney Nakoda considers sacred. There is also the Icefield Parkway, considered one of the most spectacular scenic roads in the world, winding among glaciers and majestic peaks, offering almost surreal views. In this natural paradise, finally, the grizzly bear still reigns supreme, a symbol of a wilderness that resists the passage of time. Vancouver. Vancouver pulses between the ocean and the mountains, and is a metropolis where glass skyscrapers are reflected in the waters of the Pacific. The third largest city in Canada, it is a melting pot of cultures, with over 200 different ethnicities that have created a unique urban mosaic. The mild climate, a rarity for Canada, allows cherry trees to bloom as early as February, transforming entire streets into pink corridors, which attract photographers from every corner of the planet. But can such a lively metropolis be intimately connected with nature? Certainly, and Stanley Park is the most evident proof. 400 hectares of temperate rainforest set in the urban center and surrounded by a waterfront of almost 9 kilometers, where cyclists and pedestrians share idyllic panoramas. You can also explore the totems that tell the stories of various Indigenous Canadian peoples, called First Nations, walking at Brockton Point along paths shaded by ancient sequoias. Furthermore, the hidden lakes in the park host great blue herons, fishing undisturbed, just steps away from city traffic. Returning to the city instead, in the Gastown district, gas lamps illuminate the stone streets, where the history of the first settlers meets the creative energy of a young and dynamic city. At sunset, the skyline lights up, with the North Shore Mountains turning pink. This is the magic of Vancouver, a perfect balance between wilderness and urban sophistication. Niagara Falls. The rumble grows with each step until it becomes a deafening roar that vibrates in your chest. Then suddenly, the majestic spectacle of Niagara Falls is revealed, where every second over 168,000 cubic meters of water plunge into an abyss of mist and rainbows. Have you ever wondered what it means to come face to face with the power of nature in its purest form? Navigating aboard the iconic hornblower, you will feel the icy sprays on your skin, while the boat moves dangerously close to the wall of water. Suspended between two nations, these falls have inspired generations of dreamers and daredevils, some of whom have risked everything just to cross their turbulent waters. Today, strolling among the lush surrounding gardens or tasting a local wine, you can still perceive that strange primordial force, the one that for an instant makes us feel part of something infinitely greater. The magical nighttime atmosphere must also be remembered, with the falls transforming with the many colored lights that paint them. Quebec City. Walking the streets of Quebec City means traveling through time. The stone walls, unique in North America, embrace a historic center where 17th century French architecture tells 4 centuries of history. Among the alleys of Petit Champlain, one feels as if strolling in a living painting, while the Frontenac Castle dominates the horizon. Below it, along the Dufferin Terrace, street musicians entertain passers-by, enchanted by the view of the majestic St. Lawrence River. In winter, the city transforms into an enchanted landscape, with roofs and streets covered by a white mantle, while the soft lights of the lampposts illuminate the cobbled streets, creating a magical atmosphere that seems to come out of a story. Finally, the Victorian facades tell stories of a bygone era, while conversations in melodious French echo among the historic monuments, reminding that here beats the cultural heart of Quebec, where Europe and North America merge in an immense embrace. Toronto. The reflection of the CN Tower is mirrored on the skyscrapers near Lake Ontario, while over 180 different cultures create a unique urban mosaic in the world. This is Toronto. Walking through Graffiti Alley, multicolored urban art transforms walls into an open-air gallery, telling stories of rebellion and creativity. It is the most authentic face of this constantly evolving metropolis. The iconic Cinesphere, the world's first permanent IMAX dome, shines like a silver sphere on the waterfront, while High Park offers a green refuge of 400 acres. Moreover, from the majestic Jarvis Street Baptist Church, with its spires soaring toward the sky, to the grand building of the Legislative Assembly of Ontario at Queen's Park, Toronto tells its story through monuments that resist time and change. And look at it from the island off the coast. The skyline standing against the sky is like a modern artificial mountain. Who would have thought that this city, once called York and considered a frontier outpost, would become one of the most vibrant cultural and economic capitals of North America? Jasper National Park. In the heart of the Canadian Rocky Mountains, this national park is a wild universe where time flows to the rhythm of the stars. Indeed, here is the largest dark sky preserve in the world, and there are nights so dark that the Milky Way seems close enough to touch. From the depths of Lake Moline to the glaciers of the Columbia Icefield, this sanctuary of biodiversity hosts grizzly bears, wolves, and caribou, which have roamed freely for centuries. Moreover, the historic Icefields Parkway winds through valleys sculpted by ancient glaciers, offering views that change at every turn. At dawn, fog settles on the waters of Pyramid Lake, while Mount Edith Cavell watches silently over the valley. Here, far from the chaos of civilization, one rediscovers that primordial connection with nature that modern life often makes us forget. Gros Morne National Park. An open-air geological laboratory where the bowels of the earth have been pushed to the surface, revealing the epic collision of continents that occurred 485 million years ago. Gros Morne is a living testimony to plate tectonic theory, with its eroded mountains that dive into deep fjords carved by glaciers. Here, among undulating peat bogs and boreal forests, silence is interrupted only by the cry of an eagle in flight. Furthermore, navigating in the emerald waters of Western Brook Pond and surrounded by 600-meter-high rock walls, one perceives one's infinitesimal presence in the immensity of geological time. On the park's trails, you can encounter majestic moose, red foxes, and a myriad of migratory birds, while coastal waters host whales and seals dancing among drifting icebergs. Montreal. jazz flowing from Victorian houses, lively chatter from cafes, bells resonating from the majestic Notre Dame Basilica, with its twin spires and golden interiors that leave one breathless. This is Montreal, a city with a bilingual symphony where French and English intertwine in daily conversations, while the old port comes alive with visitors strolling among historic buildings and contemporary art installations. The imposing City Hall, with its French architecture, watches over the square where the city's history continues to unfold daily. Instead, the biosphere, a sparkling geodesic sphere on St. Helens Island, symbolizes the environmental commitment of a metropolis projected toward the future. In the distance, the dome of St. Joseph's Oratory dominates the skyline from the top of Mount Royal, attracting pilgrims and tourists with its grandeur and with its 283 steps, which invite reflection during the climb. Finally, memorial monuments scattered throughout the city tell the story of a nation forged between two cultures. Tofino, clinging to the western end of Vancouver Island. It is where Canada ends and magic begins. This fishing village, transformed into a surfer's paradise, challenges the Pacific Ocean with quiet courage, while spectacular storms batter the coast during the winter months, attracting curious visitors from around the world. The true essence of Tofino emerges, however, walking along Chesterman Beach, where the morning fog creates a mystical veil over the figures of surfers challenging the perfect waves, regardless of the cold water. Furthermore, temperate rainforests with thousand-year-old cedars surround this outpost of civilization, creating a hypnotic contrast between the blue of the ocean and the intense green of the trees. Here, the wild landscape constantly changes with the tides, revealing stretches of coastline rich with marine life, while eagles soar over the jagged cliffs, giving life to a place where untouched nature reigns supreme in all its majestic beauty. Ottawa. Elegant and discreet, Ottawa stretches along the banks of the river of the same name, a capital that perfectly balances institutional solemnity and cultural vibrancy. The Parliament, with its neo-Gothic architecture and the Peace Tower soaring toward the sky, represents the beating heart of Canadian democracy. But what story does this city hide beyond its government buildings? In winter, the Rideau Canal transforms into the world's largest natural skating rink, an icy ribbon almost 8 kilometers long, where residents and visitors skate among historic bridges and snow-covered parks. At sunset, golden rays illuminate the Fairmont Chateau Laurier, a hotel that seems to have stepped out of a European fairy tale, while national museums house treasures that tell the complex identity of a young country, but with ancient roots. Ottawa whispers, does not shout, but those who know how to listen discover a surprisingly fascinating capital. Whistler. Imagine yourself surrounded by majestic mountains that seem to touch the sky, with fresh air filling your lungs and adrenaline flowing in your veins. This is Whistler, a paradise for winter sports which hosted the 2010 Olympics, but which hides much more than simple ski slopes. In the heart of the coastal mountains of British Columbia, Whistler changes face with the seasons. A perfect white blanket in winter gives way in summer to breathtaking hiking trails and crystalline alpine lakes. The pedestrian village, moreover, welcomes with typical Canadian warmth, mixing discreet luxury and spirit of adventure in perfect harmony. Typically, tourists here come for the snow, but end up staying for the fiery sunsets on the peaks, for the deer crossing the woods, and for that sense of freedom that only Canadian wilderness can give. Prince Edward Island. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to live in a watercolor? Prince Edward Island is the answer. A brushstroke of emerald green, surrounded by the blue of the Atlantic Ocean. The smallest Canadian province hides an immense heart, made of red cliffs, solitary lighthouses, and golden beaches that extend to infinity. Here, the Confederation Bridge extends majestically for 13 kilometers, connecting the island to the mainland in a triumph of modern engineering, above the tumultuous waters of the Northumberland Strait. The hinterland, then, is a mosaic of cultivated fields where the reddish earth, rich in iron, contrasts magnificently with the different shades of green of the small maple and birch woods. But what makes this island so special beyond its beauty? Perhaps the slow rhythm, almost forgotten elsewhere, or perhaps that golden light of sunset that transforms every farm, every fishing village, into a moment of pure magic. Abraham Lake. An artificial mirror of water in wild Alberta, which in winter transforms into an alien spectacle that defies imagination. When temperatures plummet below zero, indeed, the decomposition of organic material at the bottom releases methane bubbles, which rising toward the surface are captured layer by layer by the freezing process, creating formations similar to white discs or jellyfish, and remain suspended in this solid sea, transparent as glass. In summer instead, the landscape is totally different, with turquoise waters reflecting the sky, while the wind descending from the mountains creates ripples on the surface. Born from the Bighorn Dam in 1972, the lake is nestled among the majestic Canadian Rockies, with breathtaking panoramic views in every season. Abraham Lake represents the perfect union between human intervention and natural beauty, a secret still relatively unknown that only waits to be discovered by those who seek wonders off the beaten path. Halifax. Where the salty scent of the Atlantic merges with the contagious energy of a constantly evolving university city. Halifax, capital of Nova Scotia, welcomes with its skyline dominated by the Citadel, a star-shaped fortress that has watched over the city since 1749. The bustling waterfront leads among historic pubs, where ancient sea ballads resound in modern restaurants, and where you can savor freshly caught seafood. But there is something magnetic about Halifax. Perhaps it's the stories of Titanic survivors buried in its cemeteries. Or perhaps it's that typically Canadian resilience that has allowed the city to be reborn after the devastating explosion of 1917. Here, in any case, tragic history and joy of living coexist in a perfect balance that makes every visit an unforgettable experience. Yoho National Park. Yoho, in the language of the indigenous Cree, means wonder, and never was a name more appropriate. Hidden among the Rocky Mountains of British Columbia, this lesser-known jewel of Canadian parks is a succession of impetuous waterfalls, emerald-colored lakes, and imposing peaks that brush 3,000 meters. Lake Emerald, for example, has a name that doesn't lie. Indeed, its waters truly shine like the precious stone and are surrounded by coniferous forests that host bears, moose, and foxes. But the true treasure of Yoho are the Burgess Shales, 505-million-year-old marine fossils that tell the story of life's evolution on Earth. Here, moreover, nature has created a landscape that continuously changes, from the Okanagan Falls, which are among the highest in Canada, to the delicate alpine flowers that struggle to bloom during the brief mountain summer. It is certainly a place that whispers ancient secrets to those who know how to stop and listen. St. John's. The oldest city in North America, climbs steep hills with its jelly bean houses, which are rows of brightly colored dwellings that defy the Atlantic fog with their contagious optimism. Here at the eastern extremity of the continent, you can be the first in North America to see the sunrise from Cape Spear. The city, however, lives to the rhythm of the waves that crash against the rocky cliffs, just as its authentic soul is found in the pubs, where evenings transform into impromptu parties with traditional music and sailors' tales. There is something primordial about this corner of Canada that makes anyone feel as if they had arrived at the end of the world, or perhaps at the beginning. Okanagan Valley. A desert in Canada? Well, almost. The Okanagan Valley challenges every stereotype, with landscapes that recall Tuscany and Provence, more than the Great North. This unique microclimate in British Columbia is the cradle of the Canadian wine industry, with over 200 wineries distributed among gentle golden hills. Lake Okanagan, a blue ribbon 135 kilometers long, is the beating heart of the valley, where hot summers invite you to dive in between one tasting and another. But be careful. According to local legend, Ogopogo, the monster that the native Shilks venerated as the spirit of the lake, would hide in the depths of the lake. Continuing orchards of peaches, cherries and apples alternate with vineyards, creating a mosaic of colors that changes with the seasons. This can be defined as the California of Canada, where nature has decided to generously concentrate sun, water, and perfect terroir to create an unexpected gastronomic paradise. Rideau Canal. It's not just a canal. It's a history book that winds for 202 kilometers between Ottawa and Kingston. Built after the War of 1812 to provide a safe route in case of new conflict with the United States, the Rideau Canal is today a UNESCO heritage site and silent witness to Canadian evolution. In winter, magic happens with 7.8 kilometers of frozen canal, which transform into the largest natural skating rink in the world, where locals and tourists slide among hot chocolate kiosks and beaver tails, which are typical fried sweets shaped like a beaver's tail. In summer instead, rafts and boats navigate among 47 original locks still functioning, while cyclists and runners travel along the banks surrounded by maples, which then explode in autumn into a symphony of red and orange colors. It is a miracle of engineering, but become a miracle of everyday beauty. Athabasca River and Falls. A river born from glaciers, and which flows freely for over 1,200 kilometers through the province of Alberta. The Athabasca is the wild artery that nourishes northern Canada, telling stories of explorers and indigenous populations who for centuries have navigated its impetuous waters. The most important point of its long journey are definitely the Athabasca Falls in the heart of Jasper National Park, where water plunges 23 meters into a gorge carved in the rock through millennia of patient erosion. Visitors from every corner of the world are left speechless before this spectacle, where the power of water crashing against the rocks creates a symphony that resonates in the surrounding valley, accompanied by the fine mist of droplets dancing in the air. In winter, moreover, surreal blue ice columns replace the fury of water, creating ephemeral cathedrals that seem to come from an alien planet. Here, the primordial force of nature reminds us how small we are in the cosmic order. Algonquin Provincial Park. In the heart of Ontario hides a sanctuary of 7,653 square kilometers, where wolves howl in the night and moose cross misty ponds at dawn. Algonquin, the oldest provincial park in Canada, is the very essence of Canadian wilderness, made accessible, however. More than 2,400 lakes fill these great northern forests, creating a paradise for canoeists who can explore these bodies of water for days, even following the same routes that Canadian natives used centuries ago. In autumn, the park transforms into a symphony of colors, which attracts people from all over the world to admire the spectacle of flaming maples. The park also hosts an interactive museum where one can discover the rich natural and cultural history of the region, exploring the deep bond between this magnificent territory and the national Canadian identity, which continues to evolve over the centuries. Calgary. Where the spirit of the Old West meets skyscrapers. Calgary vibrates with the energy of oil that has transformed a small frontier city into the most dynamic metropolis in Alberta. But don't be fooled by its modern skyline. Its heart still beats to the rhythm of cowboys. Every July, indeed, the entire city transforms during the legendary Stampede. That is 10 days of rodeo, cart races, and outdoor pancake breakfasts, which celebrate the Western heritage. From the Calgary Tower, moreover, one can admire the infinite horizon of the prairies, which extend to the Rocky Mountains, always visible as guardians of the western horizon. There is also the Peace Bridge, which crosses the Bow River like a contemporary symbol of connection, and the Canada Olympic Park, which testifies to the sporting soul of a city that transforms every challenge into opportunity. Charlevoix. Few places on Earth show such a perfect harmony of landscapes as Charlevoix. This region of Quebec, shaped by the impact of a meteorite 350 million years ago, is a natural amphitheater where the St. Lawrence River meets steep mountains in a spectacular embrace. Recognized by UNESCO as a World Biosphere Reserve, it is a territory where nature reigns supreme, with boreal forests that turn red and gold in autumn, before succumbing to the white winter mantle that transforms the landscape for 6 months of the year. When ice wraps the river and the temperature drops to minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit, breath crystallizes in the air, and silence is interrupted only by the crackling of snow under footsteps. In this Canadian Arctic realm, northern lights reign in the sky, while in the St. Lawrence River, enormous blocks of ice float next to the dark profiles of whales rising from the deep. Alberta Badlands. Where time has scarred the earth to reveal its most ancient secrets. The Alberta Badlands are a geological scar cutting through the Canadian prairies, a lunar landscape of winding canyons, bizarre rock formations, and multicolored layers that appear hand-painted. This arid and dramatic land, shaped by millions of years of erosion, hides one of the planet's richest paleontological treasures. Drumheller, self-proclaimed dinosaur capital of the world, is the beating heart of this region. Here, where mosasaurs and pterosaurs once swam in an ancient inland sea, today paleontologists and enchanted visitors discover one of the world's richest deposits of prehistoric fossils. But the Badlands are also ancient coal mines, ghost communities that tell the story of pioneer hardship, and that incredible golden light at sunset that transforms the stratified rocks into an explosion of colors, impossible to capture in photography, but indelible in memory. Edmonton. In the heart of northern Alberta, where the North Saskatchewan River draws a green valley, Edmonton challenges stereotypes with its cultural vibrancy that flourishes despite the rigid prairie winters. The City of Champions, as it is called, reveals two distinct souls that alternate with the changing of seasons. In summer, when temperatures reach peaks up to 38 degrees Celsius, the city transforms into a lively open-air stage, earning the nickname Festival City. Lush parks like William Horillac come alive with cultural events, outdoor concerts, and the legendary Edmonton International Fringe Theatre Festival, the largest theater festival in North America, which attracts artists from around the world. With the arrival of winter instead, the city wears a crystal dress, while temperatures plummet to minus 4 degrees Fahrenheit, in a dry climate that creates powdery snow, quite different from the wet snow of eastern cities. frozen river, moreover, transforms into skating rinks, while festivals illuminate the long nights with ice sculptures, candles, and celebrations that seem to come from a northern tale. Mont-Tremblant. Hidden among the ancient Laurentian mountains of Quebec is a village that seems to have come straight from the European Alps, but with that typically Canadian touch of joie de vivre that makes it unique. In winter, 96 snow-covered slopes attract skiers of all levels to the mountain that the indigenous people called the Trembling Mountain. But Tremblant is not just snow. In fact, in summer, the deep blue of the lake of the same name invites you to navigate or fish or simply relax on its shores, while hiking trails wind through forests where maple dominates unchallenged. But what makes this place special is the accessibility of wild places. In a few minutes indeed, you can go from a gourmet restaurant to sighting a black bear, living that perfect balance between comfort and adventure that defines the Canadian outdoor experience. Kelowna. In the heart of the sunny Okanagan Valley, Kelowna shines like a jewel set among arid mountains and cobalt blue waters of Lake Okanagan. This city in British Columbia challenges the stereotypical image of cold Canada with over 2,000 hours of sunshine per year, which nourish award-winning vineyards and lush orchards. Walking along the waterfront, you can forget you are in Canada, with palm trees, sandy beaches, and sails dotting the horizon, creating an almost Mediterranean atmosphere. But just look up to see the snow-capped mountains in the distance, a perfect reminder of Canadian landscape diversity. Another fundamental aspect is the relaxed rhythm that permeates the area, and that allows you to start the day with a kayak at dawn, continue with a tasting tour among vineyards, and conclude by observing the sunset with a glass of ice wine. The sweet nectar that has made this region famous in the world. Shannon Falls. Imagine a river of water that plunges 335 meters between walls of black granite, surrounded by gigantic, centuries-old Douglas firs. Shannon Falls, the third highest waterfall in British Columbia, is not just a visual spectacle, but a multi-sensory experience that envelops with its constant roar and refreshing mist that rises from the impact. Located near Squamish, along the scenic sea-to-sky highway between Vancouver and Whistler, this natural wonder is easily accessible, but retains an aura of primordial mystery. The plunging water comes from alpine glaciers, creating a flow that changes personality with the seasons, being impetuous during the spring thaw and more contained but no less fascinating in summer. A short path among emerald green mosses and giant ferns brings tourists close enough to feel the power of nature that has shaped this dramatic landscape, reminding us how small we are in the face of geological forces. Revelstoke. Hidden between the Selkirk and Monashee Mountains of British Columbia, Revelstoke is the best-kept secret by deep snow lovers. This small railway city has reinvented itself as a skiing mecca, offering the longest skiable drop in North America. A vertiginous drop of 1,713 meters that makes even legendary alpine locations pale. But Revi, as the locals affectionately call it, shines in every season. In summer, indeed, mountain bikers face adrenaline-filled trails, while hikers explore the nearby Mount Revelstoke National Park, one of the few places in the world where you can drive from temperate rainforest to alpine tundra in less than an hour. The authentic charm of Revelstoke therefore lies precisely in its perfect balance. It's developed enough to offer modern comforts, but still wild enough to make visitors feel like pioneers. The historic center is also worth visiting, with restored Victorian buildings that have snow-capped mountains as a backdrop. Nova Scotia. Peninsula wrapped in the Atlantic fog, Nova Scotia is Canada that tells stories of shipwrecks, pirates, and courageous fishermen. This maritime province is a mosaic of brightly colored fishing villages, solitary lighthouses on wind-beaten cliffs, and beaches where you can walk for kilometers, meeting only curious seagulls. The Cabot Trail on Cape Breton Island, for example, is considered one of the most spectacular scenic routes in the world and is a ribbon of asphalt that winds among mountains that plunge into the ocean. Moving inland, instead, The province reveals green expanses and lush forests, interspersed with lakes and sinuous rivers that cross the valleys. Nova Scotia is also famous for its apple orchards, in particular for the historic Gravenstein apples, whose cultivation dates back over 2 centuries, creating an agricultural landscape of orderly beauty, which then in autumn takes on the warmest colors, from gold to deep red. Concluding this visual journey through Canada, we have moved from the charm of its most exciting wildlands to the most famous icons of its cities and provinces, discovering together not only places, but also curiosities that make every corner of this country unique. We hope that the images and stories told have enriched your knowledge and stimulated the desire to personally explore the varied beauty of this northern nation.